So everybody, thank you very much for joining this webinar about ESG. We're really happy for you to join us, and thank you very much for taking time out of your day to have a little bit more discussion, deep discussion with us about ESG, how you gather this data, how you pull it together, add it all up, how you do the reporting on it, and actually what your plans are around ESG and your strategic initiatives. And that's the goals for the webinar. That's what myself, Robert Douglas, I work at ICIT, a business partner at Workday, and we specialize in this area of financial planning and budgeting and forecasting. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we've got involved in ESG and how that comes into the finance arena, we believe. Joining me, I've got Steve Bennett. Steve Bennett's one of our solution architects. He helps implement this stuff. And actually, the bulk of the time will be with Steve, as he's going to give you a demonstration of the solution which we've built around ESG. And what we've got planned for you today is really this agenda. I'm going to briefly have a quick level set on ESG. Our goal here is not to educate you about all the different aspects of ESG, but we'll just have a little level set about it. And then we'll talk a little bit about the ICIT ESG model. And we built that on Workday Adaptive Planning, and we'll just talk about one of the reasons why we've done that and why it could be really appropriate for you and how it could be really useful. And then we'll wrap up with a little bit about ICIT, company we work for, and what you could do next to engage with us. So let's get on with that then. To start off with then, ESG, environmental, social governance, it's such a hot topic at the moment for organisations, and that's really because there's a lot of regulation coming around this. The reporting demands on organisations are pretty strict, becoming mandatory for many large-scale organisations and tightening up as we go through this year and into next year and spreading out with other people. So there's a mandatory element to it, but a lot of our companies are wanting to grasp this as well. It's a hot subject in the marketplace, how you respond to climate change, how you look at sustainability in your organization. And it's not just a governance piece. You've got to pull that in. And there's a lot of drivers in there. Thinking about your brand loyalty, consumers want to buy into ethical brands, your shareholders demanding this. As you look at your competitive advantage and making sure you're efficient as the cost of your supply chain goes up, your ESG side of things can play into all this as well. So we're seeing this subject come up more and more for our organizations we're talking to. ESG is just a very hot subject right now in terms of companies wanting to say, okay, how are we going to tackle this? How are we going to pull together this data? And just to give you an idea of the kind of things which do, this is just an example from Associated British Foods, a large organisation, FTSE 100 organisation here in the UK. This is the kind of reporting which they're producing in their annual report. This isn't done with Workday Adaptive Planning, by the way. This is just an example which we pulled out just to really illustrate the depth which organisations have to do this. I think Associated British Foods are a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of where they need to report on regulation. They've gone a bit further, but showing you the kind of detail which organisations need to pull together and add up and then report on as such. And as you can see, this is quite an in-depth piece of data. You imagine adding all this up from all the different organizations at a multi-billion-dollar organization. This is quite a lot of work, as you probably recognize. And really, that's what we're seeing from a lot of organizations, that ESG data has this sort of characteristics. Companies, as they look to pull together this data and report on it, are seeing these sorts of problems, and that's what we're seeing as such. It's large amounts of data. There's a large volume of data, and the size of that volume of data and how often you have to collect it is probably going to increase over time as well. There's a lot of different people involved in this process. It can't just be done by one person at the group. There's all the different operating companies you've got to connect with, lots of different areas in the business which you need to pull data from, and it's really disparate data sources. So it's not just you can go to the finance ledger and pull this up. This is coming from other sources, other areas of the business, whether you're looking at energy consumption across different parts of the business, or you might be looking at salary and payroll and HR information, which is coming from your HR system, or you might be looking at supply chain information, which you have to go out to your suppliers to pick up as well. So pulling all that data together is complex, involves a lot of people, a lot of different data sources, and stakeholders are demanding a lot of quality and transparency around this. Of course, as you start to report this out, this is going to be audited as well, and it's going to need to be checked over and be sure that this is secure information. So we're seeing these aspects around the data you need to collect on ESG, and what we're seeing more and more so that when you talk about having trusted data in a business, and you look for that to be managed in a business, often the focus falls on finance to be trusted to do that. They're already doing that for the finance information, so it seems an obvious step to ask the finance guys to start to collect the ESG data as well. Now, that's often in conjunction with the head of the ESG. Organizations will be having a head of sustainability, a head of ESG, but they'll often be working hand in hand with the finance people to collect this trusted data together. And so what we've built in our ESG solution on Workday Planning is really a solution which tackles this, and really hitting in these 4 key areas, which Steve will cover when we get to the demonstration. It's really that data management piece. It's allowing you to consolidate the data from multiple sources. Remember, this isn't just coming from finance, it's coming from lots of different solutions. So you need to be able to collect all that data together, convert it into the right format and the central format, do all the reporting on that as well. Within our Workday Adaptive Planning solution as well, we're doing those carbon calculations so we can take that base data, convert it into CO2 equivalents, manage that, allow you to do what ifs on those calculations as well. And then on top of that, which I think will get you your basic reporting, we're allowing you to also track how you're managing your path to net zero if you're planning some activities to reduce it. So you could put projects in there and sort of say, hey, look, we plan to reduce our carbon CO2 equivalents in these areas and track how you're doing against those projects over the year. So looking at scenarios around sustainability planning and ESG as such. So that's what we've put together around our solution. And that's the quick introduction. I'm going to pass over to Steve now to really show that demonstration in action. Before I do that, just one thing before I pass over that, we do have a Q&A panel option on this webinar. So feel free to ask any questions as you go along. I'll be watching those questions. I'll interrupt Steve as it's appropriate, or I'll just answer the questions as we go along. But Steve, over to you.
Thanks, Rob. And yeah, as I say, yeah, I mean, that's absolutely fine with me, Rob. Just jump in, interrupt as we need to. If there's burning questions, don't leave them till the end. Do throw them at us as we go through, and we'll keep it, flexible and informal. Okay, so my turn to share my screen, and we will start working through the demonstration. As Rob said, so we'll look through what we're looking at today is Workday Adaptive Planning and the solution we've developed with working with a number of customers on ESG solutions, and hopefully we can all see that dashboard. And really what we've seen over the time we've been doing this is a real evolution of people on a real curve and going from sort of early days, as Rob said, that the regulatory requirements are growing outwards and growing in more detail and bringing more companies into that need, but also the flexibility of change. So, this year, particularly something like CSRD, so much more HR focus. That's a big issue this year. Wasn't so much last year, just because of where the reporting, data gathering requirements kick in. It's an ever-moving beast, and I think that's where a flexible tool like Workday Adaptive Planning can support that, because it can change with those needs and adapt as you go, rather than being something fixed that just does reporting. And as you'll see as we go through this, we're seeing this evolution from reporting into net zero planning. But we'll jump in and I'll tell you more as we go through. So firstly, I'm looking at this in a browser. So a couple of quick things to note. Workday is a cloud-based tool. So I can access this data, I can run reports, analyze my emissions data, I can rerun a net zero forecast. I can do all of these things I want to do 24/7 anywhere I can get online. So that's a really big step up over trying to do this in Excel. And, as Rob alluded to, the manual data gathering and issues that you get with manipulating data in Excel offline, not in a cloud environment. So, just having it available is a big thing. Here, what you can see is we've got, this is just a demo dashboard. So all of the information in here is dummy, but it represents the kind of things we've done with customers over the last sort of few projects recently. So I've got my emissions data here aggregated into the key scope 1, 2, and 3 categories, of course, but also broken down by gas type in this example, by asset types. You can see which areas of the business are driving those emissions, all converted to a ton CO2 equivalent. But the difference here with Workday over and above some of the more static environments is that this is a dimensional analysis tool. So I can pivot and analyze by any of these dimensions. And when I say that, I mean scope, gas type, asset type, entity, subsidiary, all those ways of analyzing. I can do all of that live, and all of the values are being calculated live. The carbon conversion to a CO2 equivalent is happening live in memory in the system, which means this is really quick and easy to access. I can drill down and maybe just drill into a particular subsidiary and see what they're doing. I can click on any one of these and break that down. So I can click on that scope 2 there and say, well, let's look at scope 2 by asset type, and I can break it down into each type. So I'm deliberately starting at a dashboard view from a stakeholder perspective, but it means, again, your sustainability management team or the board or any kind of senior stakeholder can immediately access the live accurate data for themselves, self-service, completely read-only. So you have that ability in this type of environment to allow people a lot of self-service access. And start bringing those benefits Rob talked around not having to manually produce PowerPoint decks and send this information out, or having to manipulate data in Excel. So the rapid turnaround of analysis and data provision as this subject hots up and becomes more relevant and more critical in your organization, these benefits really start to add up. I'm looking here at emissions data. As I say, it's converted live. So in the background here, I've got some conversion tables. So again, rather than some of the other sort of solutions on the market where you have to provide it with pre-converted data, this drives that conversion for you automatically. Here you can configure and store as many conversions as you need. As you can see here, for the typical things that we all talk about, electricity and gas, right, the mainstays of ESG, but also everything down to waste recycling, investment portfolios, and what type of financial investments are we making, and is that portfolio ethical or sustainable? So every type of measure here you can convert back to a ton CO2 equivalent to really get down to that granular detail of managing your CO2 equivalent actuals, and as you'll see in a minute, versus a target, to really get down to that path to net zero. Doesn't just have to be emissions data, of course. Again, that's one of the biggest areas, but one of my phrases is a lot of people forget the G in ESG. Governance has been around for many years, and a lot of teams are doing risk registers on spreadsheets and that type of stuff. And that's not really new. That's been kicking around for a while. But this brings it together, of course. And so again, any type of data can be loaded, managed, manipulated, and planned within Workday. So this example here, a little bit more focus on, let's roll up to the total company so we've got a bit more data there. So this is more around DEI and a little bit around governance. So we've got, percentage of female worker split here. We've got safety incidents, recordable incidents, employee contractor split. So, again, all types of data. Workday's system agnostic with its integration. So we connect to a lot of HR systems and pull in a lot of people-related data. And as I say, with CSRD on the go this year, that's been a particularly busy type of integration for us, but really simple to do. And so you can pull all that information and start analyzing from the get-go, as you can see here. So on the subject there around data collection, you can integrate with various systems, and that will really, really boost the automated gathering and analyzing of data. But again, what we've seen a lot of the time with a lot of our customers is a lot of companies have distributed offices that maybe the data's not coming from a system. Maybe it's on somebody's spreadsheet. Again, that risk register point. Typically, risk register, an Excel sheet with some commentary on and some details on. You're not going to connect to that in the way that you would with a ledger or an HR system. And so for that, again, Workday can support that type of bottom-up data collection. So again, let's just pick one subsidiary off the list. And this is just an example of the type of data collection you can do. And what this is really supporting is, again, it falls on somebody, and typically it's finance, sometimes it's the BI team. Maybe you've got the resource to have a sustainability manager who's got to collect all of that data. But somebody somewhere typically has to collate a whole bunch of spreadsheets that are being sent in from subsidiaries around this type of data, recording their incidents, recording the HR split, and even down to things like this. I worked with a European-wide business that had their subsidiaries filling out these types of fields. Am I EFSA compliant yet as a subsidiary? Have I got my ISO certification? And checking these boxes that allow you to then run stats at a group level of where's my group at for my regulatory side. And so this example I'm showing you is a simple input template for data collection. Every subsidiary can access this. Incidentally, I'm the admin, so I can see all of them. But if I was working for subsidiary A, that would be the only one on my list. I can simply log in the cloud, wherever I am. I can enter my data, and all I have to do is make some changes and hit save, and I'm done. That's my submission complete. So the data gathering process is significantly faster and more organized and controlled, and it's consistent. Because every subsidiary can do it the same way with the same template. Rob, you look like you're going to come in and
yeah, no, I was just going to say that you're making the point very well, Steve. But just to add some extra colour to it, organisations, when we go speak to them, are doing this on spreadsheets, and as we know, you can do it on spreadsheets. You can definitely do that and add it up, but it doesn't give you that control and auditability and that one source of truth, pulling that data together into one place. So what you've just shown here looks very simple, but of course this is a significant step up from spreadsheets. And then as you progress, I know, Steve, you're going to hit these other points. You can layer so many other capabilities into this later. It's just, I think a lot of organizations are going to take their first step with ESG on spreadsheets, but then they'll hit problems like this. As soon as you have to send out this to 10 or 20 people, you've given yourself quite a big headache, really, if you're doing it on spreadsheets. Yeah.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and it's the same again. I'm from a finance background traditionally, and that was a typical challenge of having large amounts of data collection from large amounts of people. And this, as you said, Rob, just accentuates the issue. But also, I think the added challenge is with ESG, you're often going out to contributors who aren't typically finance and maybe aren't so comfortable with a spreadsheet and that way of doing things. So this makes it much more user friendly for non-finance and non-technical people to contribute and then move on and get on with the rest of their day job. And so this is all about making it easy for people at the front end, but also in the center to collate that data. Here I've got some employee level data just to show again the type of data collection you can do at a pretty granular level. So this is supporting a lot of people with CSRD at the moment. But again, simple flags, are my employees risk trained, CSR trained? And this then is just a lead into the planning aspect. So here, this example here is saying, I've got a number of people. I've got 16 people that in October their anti-bribery training will expire. So I can use this type of tool to then maybe talk to the L&D team and say, well, okay, maybe we need a training program in to refresh these guys and make sure that we're still compliant. So that type of activity also can be easily managed, and you can get ahead of the game for that type of planning at this stage. So a lot you can do, and then from a reporting point of view, before we kind of talk about planning, we've seen some of the dashboarding, and there's some online reporting things you can do within Workday or automated. You can also report directly within Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. It has full integration with those three products. So from an output perspective, here I've got an Excel spreadsheet with a number of different types of, again, data tracking. So something a bit more tactical on a monthly basis like this, and some typical sort of charts to be able to track my CO2 by asset, by fuel type. But also something a little bit more traditional here that would support a typical annual report. So my net zero aims and how am I doing with my headline KPIs versus targets. All of this data is automatically linked to Workday. So when it comes to refreshing an Excel deck that maybe I need to support an annual report, or I need to send to somebody who doesn't have a login to Workday, all I simply do is refresh. So if I've loaded in a set of data for next month, again, small point here, but really important. Again, it's linked to Workday. That means it's linked to Workday's calendar, so it understands time periods, terminology, that type of detail. I simply roll this over and hit refresh. I'm going to refresh all the sheets, so all the sheets I have here. Actually, I've also combined that with a financial balance sheet here and some other fields, so you can combine all of that data, and it will refresh in one simple move with one click like that. So again, it's a significant time saver, but also significant consistency and accuracy benefit of not having to do this type of thing manually. As I say, integration with Word and PowerPoint as well. So when it comes to things like Word, so be able to support more disclosure management type use cases. So Office Connect up here, which is that add-in that goes with Word and PowerPoint and Excel. Again, being able to support more formal reports, sustainability statements, but also embedding commentary in the text as well. So if I just highlight this paragraph option here, you can also embed disclosure management tagging within these types of documents. So the months and the KPIs and the words increase and decrease can be automated as well as the data. So it will fully support disclosure management. For sustainability, that's the subject of today's webinar, but also, to be fair, financial reporting and any other type of formal kind of board packs and reporting. Similar sort of thing within PowerPoint. Again, that ability to directly automate data in a more formatted board deck, such as this one. And really, it's the charts, I think, are the main issue, certainly in my experience. Charts are typically a cut and paste job within PowerPoint. Here, you can just hit refresh, it'll update. It's directly linked through to Workday's data. So again, the whole board pack in Word, in PowerPoint, or in Excel in any format, fully automated and configurable to suit your needs. And again, that ability to combine sustainability and financial data, because it would all be in the same platform. Okay, so let's just quickly move on and look at the planning side of things with the time we have available. And as I say, I mentioned it at the sort of top of the webinar, the top of my section of the webinar. This is very much an evolution we've seen with customers that start with reporting, and then kind of within Workday, you have the ability to look at planning. So it's become a really useful place to centralize and model plan data. And by that, I mean, something like this. So most companies will have a net zero strategy and will have a number of initiatives that typically involve a fair bit of capital investment to make things happen, to be able to deliver a net zero target. And what Workday can do is be that central governed source that everybody can, again, access in one place to be able to maintain and work with your net zero initiatives. So here, these different subsidiaries have different actions. So, loads of different categories. It could be anything from electrifying my fleet of vehicles to providing new biogas stoves for my fair trade suppliers, any of those options. These are categorized by the different scopes, categorized by different levels of difficulty for that project. And here I'm tracking the benefit. I can track the benefit in the raw output. So it could be saving liters of diesel, it could be meters cubed of gas, it could be any of those. And again, those conversion tables will track that live. So from a planning perspective, I can see immediately the impact of date changes, of capital investment approval sign off, whatever that may be. Up here, I've got a planning drop-down, a version drop-down. So rather than overwriting the core version of the plan, I'm just going to create a new scenario and let's have a go. Let's test a few ideas and see what that does. So I'm going to create a new version of the plan here. And I can do that on the fly within Workday. You can have as many plan versions as you need. So you can test, what if we can afford to invest in this particular project? What's that going to do to our net zero target? What does that mean for us? So let's do that now. What if we can bring forward the investment in this particularly challenging project by a couple of months? Actually, we're going to start next week. Look at that. And we'll approve that one. And again, all I have to do is make these changes and hit save, and that will automatically update everywhere in the model that is affected by that change. So that will affect my benefits target, but also would affect maybe my capital investment and my depreciation. That's linked to that too. You can see it's colored that green, so it's telling me I've made a change from my base, and obviously my targets are updated straight away. But then over here on the implementation side, just looking at that in a little bit more detail, that's tracking my emissions savings across the 3 categories, scope 1, 2, and 3, and some detail down here. But again, being able to bring these kind of what if scenarios to the table within the banner of ESG. Here, this could be a debate with all the senior stakeholders on a same sort of Zoom call like this, where we can say, look, what if we can afford to invest in doing all of the complex categorized projects as well as these 2? What will that do? Let's try that out. I'll hit the checkbox, hit save. That'll drop in the investment and the benefits of those net zero projects. And then again, that updates live. I can see in a really visual way for the stakeholder group, okay, that means we're going to hit our net zero target in 2025 instead of 2027 or whatever that would have been off the end of the chart there. So it really helps bring these discussions and these testing of scenarios to the table, and being able to make a decision, lock that strategy down, maybe delete the other 2 options and move on. And that's where this is starting to evolve customers and companies we're working with into that sustainable planning side of things, once you've bedded down the core reporting and you know where you are in terms of transparency of numbers and data. A couple more minutes left on my part of this, so I just want to move over and look at where that can ultimately end up and where some of our customers are moving to. Is really about double materiality, which is a fairly well-versed sort of ESG finance term, and it essentially just means targeting on my ESG targets and values is alongside the financial targeting and as important. And so really what customers are doing and are able to use Workday to do is start embedding sustainability as part of the regular forecasting and planning cycle. So this example is an anonymized version actually of something we did for somebody else, where we're looking at scope 3 in this example, often one of the most difficult or the most difficult scope, I think, to manage, plan, and report on, because it involves external factors, suppliers and vendors and external connections. So the solution we put together in this particular example was, in this example here, I'm sourcing various types of clothing from different suppliers around the world. And so I have a regulatory requirement to not only record the data from those suppliers and their sustainability record, but also I want to be able to source in a sustainable way and manage. Each buyer needs to manage a CO2 footprint alongside their financial target of getting the best discount and being able to buy at the lowest cost. So I've got this double target going on. So over here, what we've done within Workday is loaded all of the suppliers in. And again, this is just, dummy names and made up for this example. But here I'm storing supplier ratings, again, female worker split, human rights record, carbon footprint, whatever those ratings are that are important to you as a business to make your supplier choices can be loaded in, managed and focused on, in a visual way or in tables of data here, allowing you to make a choice. And then over here, again, that ability to test, model, and work with data quickly and easily. Everything I'm doing is drop-down lists and choices. I'm not typing data into a spreadsheet. I can only select from fields that I'm validated to. So in this example here, what's happening is, I'm sourcing my various categories of clothing from various suppliers around the world. At the moment, what this is showing you is I'm saving quite a lot of money here. So compared to last time round, actually, I've got, 250K saving there. That's great from a financial perspective, but the choices I've made for supplier have put me way over my CO2 footprint. So by combining those 2 data sources together, I can then provide buyers, procurement managers, whoever it may be, with a template like this to say, okay, what if we looked at the relative CO2 footprint of our suppliers and made a different choice? Maybe I'm going to source my outerwear for this category from this supplier instead. Let's test that, make a change, hit save. Again, that's all I need to do. That updates the model everywhere. I've shifted my buying pattern. That's put me well underneath my CO2 footprint. Fantastic. Actually, what's happened is the cost has gone up slightly, but that's a reality of this double materiality. finance and cost saving isn't always the major choice anymore with this type of double materiality. So what I've done here is blended the two together. In total, I'm still saving money based on last year. So as a business, we're still keeping our cost base down, but I've also hit my CO2 footprint target. That's where this benefit comes in, that it allows you to manage both targets together at a reasonably granular level of detail, as you can see, but do that quickly and easily within a centralized planning tool that you can access anywhere you can get online. Okay, so that's a really quick run through from data gathering, reporting, and analysis through into net zero management, and then through into the ultimate aim that we see around embedding ESG into your planning process. So thank you for watching the demo, and I will hand you back to Rob for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Steve. Fantastic stuff. Let me just share my screen again. So hopefully that comes up. There you go. So I think Steve really hit the point there. We put quite a bit of work into building that solution. It's really to tackle these points and these problems which you see, which is generally caused by spreadsheets. As people get into this data, they find that it's very disparate, as we said, spread around the organization from lots of different sources. Lots of different people need to both be involved in gathering it, modeling it, looking at it, and reporting on it. Now, a lot of ESG solutions out there will handle the reporting side for you, will do something around the reporting, help you gather it and report it. But where we really feel that Workday Adaptive Planning is suitable for this, it really helps you step up, not just in terms of managing that workflow in terms of data and carbon calculations, because we can put that modeling engine to work on this ESG data, but really help you in that sustainability planning side of things as well, being able to do some projects, because it can handle those scenarios and those what ifs. So it's not just a flat set of data which you report on once and then you lock it away. This is an interactive set of data which you can use around the business to help you make decisions and look at that data. Really handling these 4 key points, as we said. Data management, it's complex to pull that data from lots of different sources. Workday Adaptive Planning is purpose-built to handle that, collecting data in, converting it through and doing those calculations, those carbon calculations, doing that modeling piece as well. We can handle that capability in terms of planning out what your goals and objectives are around ESG, so you can put all those plans, that path to net zero, put those projects in there and do that, and really do that scenario modeling and what if capability around it. So Workday Adaptive Planning is really suitable for that. As Steve put together a really good demo, your ESG journey, of course, could be very different. So we would be happy to engage with you and talk to you in more detail about it. And what gives us that experience, that ability to do that, is that both me and Steve work at iSeeIt. We've been going for 25 years or so and really got a lot of experience doing these sorts of projects. That's all we do, is work with Workday Adaptive Planning on budgeting and forecasting and handling this sort of data, pulling together. So we've got a lot of experience, a lot of qualified people who they're there to help you on this journey. And what we'd suggest you to do really is share a sample of your data with us. If you've got some examples of stuff you're struggling with, bits of data you're pulling together, send over examples to us. Workday Adaptive Planning is not a programming environment. It's really a click environment. So we can just go through and build a model quite quickly for you. Steve can put that together and give you a personalized demo on how your ESG data, the kind of things you're trying to tackle, would look in a model like this. If you're interested in that, you can reach out to us either at this email address here, or you can reach out to me. That's just a screenshot. Sorry, I didn't put my contact details. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn or reply to Mark Bodger, who you would have seen sent out the emails on this to register the event. So we come to the end of the presentation. I'd like to say thank you very much for taking your time out today to spend with us. Enjoy the rest of the day. Hope you manage to get some ice cream in that if it's a nice sunny day where you are. Thank you very much for your time. Speak to you soon.